Escape Pod. Episode 738. Summer Flashback. Flash from the Vault.
Hi there. Welcome to Escape Pod Summer School, where we post some of our favorite episodes from the vault with a new perspective. I'm your co-editor for this class, Mer Lafferty, bringing you 3 Flash episodes from long, long ago. We bring you Taco by Greg Van Eekhout, Get Me to the Job on Time by Ian Randall Strock, and Hibernation by Madge E. Miller. Greg Van Eekhout is a novelist of science fiction and fantasy for audiences ranging from adult to middle grade. His work has been selected as finalist for the Sunshine State Award, the Andre Norton Award for Young Adult Science Fiction and Fantasy, and the Nebula Award. His novels include The Boy at the End of the World, Norse Code, and the California Bones trilogy. He's also published about 24 short stories, several of which have appeared in Year's Best anthologies. Forthcoming works include the middle grade novel Starward Bound, about dogs on a deep space mission. He lives with his wife and dogs in San Diego, California, where he enjoys beach walks and tacos. Find more about him at writingandsnacks.com. The narrator is John Meager. Program the settings in the Wayback Machine to 2009. It's story time.
Taco by Greg Van Eekhout. Hey, tell me, this look like Jesus to you? I come to Tito's Tacos for a lot of reasons. The freeway overpass ambiance, the way the old men in the kitchen wrapped the burritos tighter than Cuban cigars, the shiny Kennedy 50-cent pieces you always get as part of your change. A lot of reasons, but conversation isn't among them. Nonetheless, I dutifully look up from my lunch to see what the guy at the next table over is talking about. He holds up a tortilla chip for me to inspect. It's a Tito's chip, which means it's roughly the thickness of a roofing shingle. It looks like Jesus, don't it? I shrug. Kinda? I guess. He squints at me. He squints at his chip. I swear on my grandmother's soul, I am looking into the face of Christ, our Lord and Savior, and he's looking right back at me. I reach for his chip and he pulls it away, cradling it to his chest. Listen, you asked me what I thought, and I say it looks more like Charles Manson, or a sheepdog. What you're experiencing is false pattern recognition. Our brains aren't always good at separating signal from noise, and that's because we're evolved to look for pattern, even when there's nothing but static. There's no difference between seeing the Virgin Mary on a grilled cheese sandwich and Fonzie in a cumulus cloud. Okay, he says, but the important thing is, do you think I could sell it on eBay? I'll give you $5 for it right now if you let me finish my lunch in peace. You're not very friendly, he says as he trades me the chip for 4 singles and 2 50-cent pieces. No, I agree, using the chip to scoop up taco meat and a bit of cheese. It's a Tito's chip, so I nearly break my teeth on it. After he's gone, I get on my cell phone and dial a basement office downtown, rented by the Los Angeles Archdiocese. Yeah? Says the voice that picks up. Face is scrubbed, I say, followed by a set of map coordinates. Got it, says the voice before hanging up. My message will be relayed to a dozen other basement offices across the world. The last one is located in a dank cave below the Vatican. I've been there a few times. The pipes drip, leaving a mildew pattern on the wall that I don't look at too closely.
And that was our story. One of them, anyway. When I was an emo teen, I read an interview with Robert Smith of The Cure. He said he didn't believe in God, but he envied those who did, because it must be nice to go to sleep thinking someone was watching over you. I'm paraphrasing, it's been mumble years since I read this. But I feel that way about holy food faces and crystals and superstition. Although such beliefs can bring people to do dangerously stupid or harmful things, or disgusting if you have baseball players not changing socks because it brings them luck, it still must be amazing to be doing something as simple as eating a snack and then see the face of God. My snacking has never been that sublime. It's hard to throw a rock at the archives of Escape Pod and not hit a Greg Van Eekhout story. While you really can't throw a rock at a database unless you attack the server, the metaphor still holds. Greg is a prolific writer, and in addition to several flash pieces over the years, he's also brought us full-length stories. If you have an hour or two, I highly recommend going to escapepod.org and checking out the list of Van Eekhout stories we have there. Or heck, just go pick up some of his books. Our next story is Get Me to the Job on Time by Ian Randall Strock. Ian is a writer, editor, and publisher, and has been in his life a teacher of Hebrew and English, a tour guide of Niagara Falls, and a marketer for a Wall Street wealth management firm. He blogs at ianrandallstrock.com. It's narrated by Eli Hirschman. He's a voice actor, announcer, narrator, podcaster, and presenter. Find out more about him at elihirschman.com. This originally ran in Analog Science Fiction and Fact. The settings stay on 2009 for the next one, but it's still story time.
Get Me to the Job on Time by Ian Randall Strock. Maybe it's what you do with the knowledge that determines whether or not you'll discover the secret of time travel. What? I asked the old man. I know for a fact that time travel is possible. I knew the man who discovered it, and you'll never guess what he used his discovery for. Well, I didn't believe that old man any more than you believe me, but we'd been waiting in that airport for 4 hours, so I humored him. All right, I'll bite, I said. What did he use time travel for? Wally didn't need to see the pyramids getting built, or sail with Columbus, or even watch JFK's assassination. What Wally wanted to do, more than anything, was get to work on time. An introduction like that demands a story, so I sat down and let him tell me. Wally didn't want fame, the old man said. I think he would have been perfectly happy if no one but the payroll department knew his name. Did I mention we both worked in the same department? Anyway, he loved his job. We were editors, and Wally simply loved being an editor. Always got his work done on schedule, never made any mistakes, and there was no place he'd rather be. But he had one big problem at work. Wally just could not get to work by 9 a.m. Some days it was a common excuse, train delays, doctor appointments, plumbing emergencies, and sometimes the damnedest things happened to him. He got caught in holdups, subway hijackings, rat stampedes. Anything and everything, it seemed, conspired to keep Wally from getting to work on time. And he could never understand it. On the one hand, his work was always done on time, and his lateness never affected anyone else. If I wanted to talk to Wally, I knew I had to wait till late morning. On the other hand, he tried his hardest to get in on time, and the few times he made it, he'd usually left the house 3 hours early, and had been at his desk since 6:30. He just couldn't win. I never believed in a determinist universe, but in Wally's case I was starting to make an exception. Discovering time travel, I think, was his calling. If he hadn't, the perversity of the universe would have been proven beyond all doubt. One Monday, Wally and I both walked in the door at 9 on the dot. He wasn't a few minutes late, nor screamingly early. He was precisely on time. "Wally," I said, "I'm stunned." "That's 2 of us," he said, and sat down to get to work. I let the incident go, chalking it up to blind chance. I mean, if you're working in a place for a couple of years, the odds have to favor walking in the door at 9 a.m. at least once, right? Well, the next morning, wouldn't you know it, he and I were in the same elevator, and on our floor at 9 on the tick. "Okay, Wally," I said, 2 days in a row you're on time. What gives? Are you leaving 3 hours early, and then waiting for me to get here on time?" No, he stammered. "Nothing like that. It's just, well, I think I've finally figured out how to get here on time." "How'd you do it?" I asked. "Can you keep a secret?" I nodded. "I've discovered the secret of time travel." And he clammed up. Wouldn't say another word. I looked over at him every now and again throughout the day, and when he caught my eye, he'd wink and smile a little, so I wasn't sure if he'd been pulling my leg or not. Come Friday, I couldn't stand it. I sidled up to Wally's desk about 9:30 and whispered to him, "Time travel, huh?" "Mm-hmm," he said. "So what time did you leave home to get here at 9? "You won't believe me," he said. "Try me." Today I woke up at noon, watched the news, showered, ate breakfast about 1 this afternoon, took an uncrowded subway ride into work, got to the lobby about 1:45 this afternoon, and then time-traveled back to 8:57 this morning. Then I stepped out from behind that big potted fern and joined the throng jostling for the elevators. "Do you really believe me to believe that cockamamie story?" I asked him. "No, not really, but it's the truth." And he went back to work. I sat down at my desk, staring at the papers in front of me and not seeing them. Then I gave up. I dialed Wally's home phone number. It rang 5 times, and I was looking at Wally the whole time. On the 6th ring, a groggy Wally picked up. I knew his voice. I'm listening to Wally wake up on the phone while I'm watching him working at his desk, not 10 feet from me. I hung up and went back to Wally's desk. "Oh yeah," he said. "Before I woke at noon, the phone woke me sometime in the morning, but there was no one there." I left the company a few years later, but by that time I believed him. I think he really had found the secret to time travel. I asked him about it at my going-away party. "If you've really discovered time travel, what are you going to do with it?" "What do you mean, do with it?" he asked. "I get to work on time. Isn't that enough?" And the thing about Wally was, getting to work on time really was enough for him. Then our flight was called. I boarded early to get to my seat in the back, while the old man waited for his row to be called. I figured I wouldn't see him again. On the plane, however, he smiled at me as I walked to the back. And we landed 2 hours early.
That was our second story. What can I say? I'm a sucker for extraordinary solutions to ordinary problems. I always wondered why any teleporting superhero would ever walk. Ever. The Good Place actually addressed this with the powerful AI Janet going to an area where she didn't have powers, and she had to walk. She says, "I've never had to walk before, this is fun." And in a couple of seconds, now I'm bored, walking is dumb. In further watching the show, I realized they were very consistent and Janet had always teleported everywhere. So yeah, if I had a time machine, I'd be too scared to go back and kill Hitler or any other fascist dictator who's destroyed countless lives. And going back in time to warn yourself not to do that stupid thing you regret could also have disastrous consequences because often it's our mistakes that help us grow. So, I'm on board with using time travel to get places on time. And I'm not just saying that because I'm chronically late. Not at all. Our next story is Hibernation by Madge E. Miller. Madge is a writer, crafter, traveler, and PR person. It's narrated by our own Sarah Ely, the founder and original editor of Escape Pod. She mispronounced her name as Steve Ely at the time and came out as transgender in 2015. Sarah lives in Atlanta, Georgia with her 2 spouses. She prefers Spice, Sandy, and Kat. So if there were ever any betting pools on what happened to Steve, the dark horse winner is change sex and join a committed lesbian love triangle. She is obviously still having fun. We're going a bit further back to 2006. We're at a very early story time.
Hibernation by Madge E. Miller. 2 Alaskan Kodiak bears joined a small circus, where the pair appeared nightly in a parade, pulling a covered wagon. The fact that they had joined the circus was not so strange. The circus life was very popular, even for the better class of bear. The strange thing was that they were both primitive mutes. This alone elevated, or, in the opinion of some bears still angry about the great Russian dancing bear revolt of '06, lowered them to the level of freak show attraction. Studious black bears and thick-headed grizzlies paid top dollar to sit under the antique big top tent to watch the twin Kodiaks pull the brightly painted wagon. They paid even more to sit in the front row for a freak show performance. The Kodiaks were cleverly placed as the last act. That meant that cotton candy, hot dog, and popcorn sellers could work their magic on the bored crowd of bears and the rare human family. By the time the show had worked its way from Zelda the Bearded Lady to Ator the Muscle Man, the audience was in a sugar-amplified frenzy of excitement. The Kodiaks' act always began with dinner. On some nights, the 2 bears fished for salmon in a huge metal tank. Other nights they rooted through trash cans or broke into cars to ravage picnic baskets. Then they would lumber around the stage on all 4s, taking turns standing on their hind legs to make huge scratches on a fake tree. All these actions were performed in an eerie silence, as the Kodiaks made not even one grunt or growl. This silent display of wild early bear behavior left everyone awed. Afterwards, the audience gossiped about the Kodiaks. Were they tragic victims of their environment? Kodiak Island bears were well known for inbreeding and eating food found in garbage dumps. Perhaps they had been abandoned in the wild and grown up away from the care of the bear community. Did they even have names? Whatever the reason for their lack of speech and primitive behavior, the other bears were fascinated by the twin Kodiaks, and the ringmaster was certainly cashing in. He worked the Kodiaks from early morning until late at night, forcing them to do 8 shows a day with no rest days. By the end of the touring season, the twins were very thin and clearly showing signs of extreme exhaustion. That winter, the ringmaster settled the troupe in a small warehouse in Las Vegas. The Kodiaks had their own special cage room with plenty of straw and special climate control. The first group to travel to Las Vegas for the show was shocked by the price of the tickets.
$50, said a small bear in a 3-piece suit. That's highway robbery.
The show's barker arched his bushy gray caterpillar eyebrows and held out his hand for the money. Grumbling, the small bear and his friend, a large grizzly, filed into the theater, along with the rest of the sold-out crowd. Thanks to a few well-timed, fierce looks from the grizzly, the two managed to commandeer seats right in the front row, next to a sign announcing in bold letters, "Quiet, please." The lights came up slowly, revealing the Kodiaks. They weren't their lively, lumbering selves, but instead lay curled into a furry mass, sleeping. Their soft snores echoed through the auditorium. The bears in the audience began whispering excitedly, respectful of the requested silence in the face of the ancient ritual of hibernation. However, the 2 bears seated in the front row began to loudly speculate on this behavior.
"Well, I thought we'd see something more exciting," said Frank the grizzly.
"This is quite exciting," responded Edward the black bear. "Great-grandpa often said that hibernation was one of the great mysteries of life."
"I don't see anything very mysterious. We all sleep."
Frank's rumbling bass echoed in the room, causing their fellow audience members to glare at the 2 loudmouth bears. "But we don't hibernate. The theory is, when our brains evolve past a certain level, we could no longer drop into the deepest level of sleep needed to slow the metabolism." Edward droned on with his tedious explanation of ancient versus modern bear behavior, despite several loud attempts to shush him. Just as the ringmaster and 2 burly human roustabouts started down the aisle to remove them, a piercing voice shouted, "Would you be quiet? We're trying to sleep!" Stunned, the audience stared at the 2 talking Kodiak bears, one of whom had his paw over his snout, eyes wide in shock. The ringmaster racked his brain trying to come up with a way to salvage the situation when the second Kodiak turned on his brother. "Why'd you have to go and mess things up? This is the best gig we've had since we quit school!" With a roar, he pounced on his twin, and the 2 wrestled fiercely, eventually falling off the stage and into the audience, which scrambled out of the way of the struggling Kodiaks. When they were done, not only was the ringmaster's scam in shambles, so was the auditorium. Stuffing from the seats was still floating down from the rafters a week later when a wrestling promoter, who had paid $15.99 to download an illicit video of the fight, called the twins and spoke with their manager, the ringmaster, about a nationwide tag team pro wrestling tour. 2 Alaskan Kodiak bears joined the wrestling circuit, where they appeared nightly in a ring, wearing tights and a cape.
And that was our final story. At the end of the book Watership Down, the mother rabbits tell their babies stories of Elahrera, the trickster tricking humans, the god Frith, and the evil general. The babies are bored of the old stories, not knowing they were actual adventures their grandparents went through, and they don't appreciate the sacrifices they made. I can imagine those rabbits watching the movie and seeing the amazing things their forebears did, discovering how boats worked, befriending a seagull, and thinking how quaint it was that once upon a time rabbits didn't understand that wood floats. We all look back on those that came before with wonder and a little bit of superiority, forgetting what it was like to experience all of that as new. On the other hand, when all you have is the past and the future moves on without you, then you can use that past to get by, as the bears did. Although I do love the wrestling bears more than the hibernating ones. So the world's on fire, and it's kind of hard to ask for donations during this time. But if you're one of the lucky people who are able to work and still make money, then please consider a one-time donation or becoming a patron of Escape Artists. We know it's a hard time, but it's more important than ever to bring distraction and a fun story to people every week. And that's what all 4 of our podcasts, Escape Pod, Pseudopod, Cast of Wonders, and Podcastle do. So donate at escapepod.org or patreon.com/EA Podcasts. Escape Pod is a production of Escape Artists Incorporated, published under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. All other rights are reserved by our authors. Our music is by permission of Daikaiju. You can find out more about them at daikaiju.org. That was our show for this week. Our quote comes from Socrates when he said, "I drink what?" We'll see you next week. Have fun and wash your hands.